It's not much.
Mhm.
You want to call the meeting to order?
I do. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Would you do roll call, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Joe Pictionary. Josh Aguilar. Daniel Davison is excused. Cindy Koza is excused. Jonathan Hayes. Carla Berg is excused. Terry Dillon.
Here.
Adam Jenkins.
Here.
Brett Yancey is excused. And Eric Adams, who said he'd be joining us, so maybe he's just running a few minutes late.
Okay. All right. Has everybody had a chance to read and go over the minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay.
I wonder if Lisa, if you could read.
Yes, and I'm going to read this right now, so. This is business from the audience. Public testimony will be received during business from the audience. As a reminder, the meeting is being recorded. The committee will listen to your comments, but will not respond to public comments until the committee response portion of the meeting agenda. Meeting minutes will be taken by staff and forwarded to the city manager and city council. Members of the public can always send written testimony to the committee or city council. As we begin our meeting tonight, I would ask members of the virtual audience, please keep yourselves on mute until you are called to provide public testimony. Speakers in person will be allowed to speak first, after which virtual audience members will be allowed to speak. Public testimony will allow speakers 2 minutes each for a total of 20 minutes. If you are joining us online with a tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to speak, please use the raise hand feature to make a request. You will be called on when it is your turn to speak. Please identify your name, Springfield ward number, and the subject you would like to speak about. People calling in by phone only, you are in listen mode only and cannot be called upon. Any questions? Thank you.
We don't have any members of the public that have asked to speak. And it doesn't look like so far anybody is raising their hands.
Okay. All right, then we do not have no need for a committee response. And we have a guest speaker here, Aaron Selvey from the municipal court. So I'll turn it over to you, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Some of you might know me, but some of you might not. My name is Aaron Selvey. I'm now the court program coordinator for the Springfield Municipal Court. Worked for the municipal court since 2009 in various capacities and took over as the program coordinator in January when we started this treatment court program. So I run the day-to-day of the treatment court program and monitor our grant. Go to the next slide. Get mine up too, so I know what I'm looking at here. So we originally received our grant funding from the Bureau of Justice Assistance, which is part of the U.S. Department of Justice, in October of 2003. The city received a $900,000 grant with a $300,000 match in order to run the treatment court program for 4 years. So it's to help implement and develop our program through September of 2027. We join more than 4,000 treatment courts nationwide, including places as far flung as Alaska or Puerto Rico, Guam or Maine, every state in between. We do serve as the court for all misdemeanors that are issued in the city of Springfield. In 2023, there were 2,537 criminal cases filed in our court on over 1,300 individuals. Prior to receiving this grant, part of the run up to making the application, we did a test screening of individuals in the Springfield Municipal Jail for treatment needs and high criminogenic needs. And of the 20 individuals, 16 of them were found to have moderate or severe substance use disorder, and all 20 of them were found to be a moderate or extreme risk for continued criminal behavior. We have developed, as we've built this program, we've developed relationships with our program partners, such as the treatment team from emergence, prosecution, defense attorneys, and the Springfield Police Department. And these specialized programs provide an alternative to incarceration for individuals struggling with addiction and focus on long-term treatment and rehabilitation to try and break that cycle. So our program began accepting referrals in January of 2024, and since then, we've screened over 40 individuals since February. We have 15 participants enrolled. The most common reason for not enrolling is that they failed to appear prior to enrollment, and so that's something we're working on. And we have more people on the way. We have several that could have opted in this week but weren't quite ready, so maybe we'll get some more opting in next week. So who are the participants? They're all members of the Springfield and Lane County communities. We have, this has changed slightly as of today. It's actually 7 women and 8 men. And their ages range from 22 to 51. The average age being about 29. They're all at significant risk for committing new crimes or not completing less intensive dispositions. Many of them were already unsuccessful here or elsewhere on traditional bench probation and getting new charges in Springfield and elsewhere while not addressing their substance use or meeting their other obligations. They all have moderate to severe substance use disorders as clinically described. The average age of first substance use is 12, but the earliest person began using substances at the age of 5. All of them began using substances at age 18 or under. They've all had multiple, or most of them have had multiple previous treatment attempts and have been unsuccessful at maintaining sobriety. They also have high social service needs, putting them at risk for recidivating or committing new crimes, including trauma, unstable housing or unsafe living situations, less than a high school education, minimal or no employment, or being involved with the DHS or child welfare system themselves or for their own children. These needs put our participants at a higher risk of reoccurrence and also of continued substance use. So what kind of charges are we taking? We'll take any person with a class B or A misdemeanor, which are the higher level crimes that we see. Currently, our participants have 18 DUIs between the 15 of them. And those are just DUIs in our court. Several of them have DUIs in other courts as well, including felony level DUIs. 7 of our participants have 2 or more DUIs. We also take individuals committing property crimes, including theft, credit card fraud, or organized retail fraud or retail theft, and menacing, harassment, or resisting arrest type charges. Most of them, many of them also have pending criminal cases in other courts, including Eugene Municipal or the Lane County Circuit Court. So besides our participants, who could benefit from a program like this? Anyone who lives in the city of Springfield, pays taxes, or drives on the streets of the city of Springfield can benefit. Research by All Rise, which is the professional organization that sort of develops the best practice standards, shows that the treatment courts can produce a benefit of over $6,000 per participant and return up to $27 for every dollar invested. That's in savings to the system, the whole system, including jail, legal, medical, ERs, just police contact time. It really adds up per participant when you think of how many places and times they touch the system. But it's especially important for their families. 7 of our participants have children or grandchildren or are expecting. And the impact could include your family or friends because every family is touched by this addiction crisis. Treatment court is different than standard court because it involves increased supervision. So we have a dedicated probation officer from Lane County Parole and Probation. That's the only program in our court that has supervised probation. Everyone else is just on bench probation, which is monitored by the court. In the earlier phases, they're required to check in once a week with the court, and they have other obligations in between, including treatment groups, meetings with their PO, meetings with the case manager. There's a minimum mandatory amount, 13 hours of treatment per week at the beginning, 2 UAs per week during the entire program, and structured progress throughout phases. And we also have a trained, dedicated team of members that follow the national best practice standards. We've been to a national conference. We've been to 2 national conferences. And we've also taken training provided by the Bureau of Justice. So in the beginning phases, the participants are required to come to court every week. We're holding our sessions Thursdays at 3 p.m. Prior to that session, the team sits down and staffs every individual, what their progress was for the week or lack thereof, and then what their response should be. As they slowly progress, it slowly reduces as the individuals advance through treatment. So in the later phases, they come every other week or every third week as they begin to get through those phases. Structured sanctions to get individuals on the right track could include essays, community service, road crew or jail, court sit-ins, all the way to termination and longer jail sentences. Incentives are provided for appropriate behaviors, and the best practices to provide at least 3 incentives to every sanction, but 10 to 1 is even better. Incentives don't have to be something monetary. They can be big or small, depending on the placement in the phases. They can be verbal or written commendations or recognition, or incentives such as coming to court less often, through gift cards, food, or other items. We have a wheel in the courtroom that anyone who's been 100% in that week gets to spin to get a prize. And 100% means they made all of their obligations and appointments for the week and attended all of their treatment groups and sessions. So just an overview of the court phases. There are 5. Everyone begins in phase 1, like I said, with the attendance weekly. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's okay.
I don't know how to go back. On this, oh, there it is. There you go.
And the first phase is a minimum of 4 weeks. They get progressively longer. Phase 2 is a minimum of 8 weeks. Each phase has a slightly different sort of focus, because as you get them through that acute stabilization, you want to be able to get them clinically stabilized in their substance use disorder, and then start working on those pro-social habits, making sure they have stable housing, stable access to food, possibly education or job requirements depending on their needs, helping with childcare, helping them work out different barriers that they might have. And then the final phase is recovery management. So by that point, they should have, by the time they graduate out of phase 5, they should have been in the program for a minimum of 12 months and achieved 120 days, which is 4 months of consecutive days of sobriety. That's measured by their first negative UA, meaning that it didn't have any substances in it and they haven't missed any UAs since then. And that's how we measure that date. Currently, we have some people that are getting up towards 100, which is very exciting. So the data shows that treatment courts work. They're more effective than some traditional sentencing models, especially for that high-risk, high-need population. Numerous studies have indicated that treatment courts work and reduce recidivism, their likelihood to commit new crimes. A review of 5 independent analysis concluded that drug courts significantly reduced crime. And well-administered drug courts were found to reduce crime by up to as much as 35% compared to traditional dispositions. So our goals for our participants are to have an effective treatment court that focuses on those high risk and high need individuals, people who have those barriers, to reduce the recidivism rates by addressing those root causes and issues that they have that will cause them to commit crimes, including the substance use disorder, and to provide a productive outlet and help them build those pro-social habits before they're graduated out of the program. We have multiple community partners that help us through this process. The Springfield City Prosecutor's Office, the defense attorney that we've contracted with, Lane County Parole and Probation has offered to, or we pay them, but they provide us with a probation officer who's assigned to our team. Case management is provided by Quality Research Associates, who also does all of our evaluations for all the DUIs that we have. So she's really great. And then Springfield Police Department graciously offered as an officer to stay connected with the program. It's typically Officer Cardwell. She's participated in our trainings and attended the All Rise conference with us in 2024. But Officers Loper and Nelson have also filled in, and they were great. Maintaining that connection to officers on patrol will really help us target offenders and know about participant violations quicker. That information out on the street about who they're associating with, where they might be living outside of a regular apartment or house, and any crimes that might be committed that we aren't privy to. And then treatment is through emergency addiction services. I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you might have.
I do have a question.
Yes, please.
In the treatment, is there a specific drug that's more
More prevalent?
Thank you.
Most of our participants are multi drug users, so more than one. There's often fentanyl, methamphetamine, those are two of the biggest ones. But we also have some participants where their only intoxicant is alcohol. They just have a lot of DUIs. So it kind of runs the gambit, but the UAs mostly come back with methamphetamine or opiates.
Okay. And maybe you, Chief, can answer this question for, what's the difference between a felony DUI and a non-felony DUI?
Usually injuries or major property damage, things like that.
Or how many they've had. So if they have 3 convictions, the next one is a felony.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions?
I do. On the, you have a participants coming in, and are they coming from as an inmate at the jail, or are they fresh off the street?
So it kind of depends, but a lot of them are currently or have been incarcerated in the Springfield jail. And we either have emergents come screen them while they're in custody, or set an appointment for them as soon as they're released to go be screened by the treatment provider to make sure that they do meet that high need level. All of our participants are currently post conviction, meaning that they're ordered to attend treatment court as a term of their probation. A few of them, it's because their probation was at risk of being revoked. And so as part of that process, they're ordered to attend treatment court. We had a couple early on of individuals who asked to be admitted. Instead of having lengthy jail sentences hanging over their head, and they're actually some of our most successful participants currently in phase 3, which is great.
So I assume that most of your court conditions of probation seems to be indicating that it include treatment. And so when you have a person that's in the program and is rearrested while in the program, how do they comply with the treatment condition of probation?
So there's a couple different ways we've dealt with people who've been rearrested while they're in the program. It's happened a few times. The treatment provider is notified that they're in custody. If they are actively on medications for addiction treatment, so things like methadone, Suboxone, Vivitrol, they can receive those medications while they're in custody if they're compliant, and their provider can bring those daily to have their medications. The emergents will come, they've sent peer support to come help pick people up as they're released from jail and take them back to the emergence office to, go back to group or be with their individual counselor. And often we'll make it a term of their new probation, if they got a new crime that's being put on probation, that they continue to cooperate with we call it SMART Court, Springfield Municipal Adult Rehabilitation or Treatment Court.
So other courts, for example, the circuit court in Lane County, when they make a condition for inmates to continue their treatment, and that is satisfied through the Lane County Jail, through the NA and AA programs. What about Springfield?
I don't believe that they have support groups inside the jail right now, but they do.
That's satisfied, I'm saying, but that not satisfied the same as the other courts?
No, so the term of probation is that they comply with the SMART Court program. So it's the whole program. It's not just the treatment component. So it's those court check-ins, it's checking with that probation officer. It's abiding by all of the rules and terms of our program. They sign a handbook and a petition when they opt in to agree to abide by all of those things. And that includes the treatment piece of it that is run through the clinical provider emergence.
Erin, is there a is there a maximum number of people that can be in this at one time?
Right now, based on the grant that we have, our maximum would probably be about 30. We are applying for additional grant funds from different sources to try and expand that. But we also, we have to use court time, judge time, my time. And so there probably would be limited to about 30 to 50 overall, even if we had more money. But that seems pretty realistic based on the number of cases that we get, and since February, how many referrals we've had.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Erin?
How do you feel about the program?
I'm super excited about it. So I've been with this court for 15 years, and I'm really excited to see a different approach and something that is backed by science. A lot of the criminal justice system is not researched, studied very well. There's not a lot of data on the outcomes. But treatment courts have been studied for decades, and have shown to be effective if they're run correctly. So I'm very excited to see this new program.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Does the client have to be in trouble with the law or arrested and in jail in order to attend the treatment program in the court?
They do need to have, in order to get into this program, they need to have a pending criminal case in our court. The Lane County Circuit Court also has treatment court. They have multiple tracks, including mental health court and veterans court. We only have the one track, but there are treatment options through emergence for people who don't have cases that are walk-in, don't need a referral, don't need insurance.
Do they get the same amount, the same type of treatment?
The
Yes.
medical side, that's the clinical side of it, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
agreeing to come and present.
Yeah, I'm available for questions anytime, if anyone thinks of any more, and we just appreciate your community support and building this program.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Seeing you again, Eric.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right. Chief, you were up.
Welcome. Good to see everybody here again. I wasn't here last time. Was it Lieutenant Myers here last time? Probably there last time. Okay. All right, we got a bunch of updates. So last week we did a promotion ceremony. I think it's the biggest ceremony we've had in my 3 years here. We did 10 people. So we hired 2 lateral police officers, very experienced police officers came from other places. We hired 2 lateral corrections folks, very experienced people. One came from basically the state prison system and another one came from out of state. So there's 4. We recognize somebody that's becoming a detective. We hired 2 record specialists. We hired a property evidence control specialist. What am I up to now? 8. Well, no, freedom.
Did you say detention?
Detention, 2 patrol.
Lieutenant Meyer?
Oh, Lieutenant Myers, yeah, Sergeant Myers, who's run professional standards for the last, I don't know, 18 months or so, and done just a hell of a job. We promoted him to lieutenant. He's now overseeing all the patrol divisions, doing a great job. So that was pretty exciting. So we got 10 people that we either promoted or hired last week. And so things are really, we have a stronger personnel strength today than we've had during my time here, and I think for a few years before that. So we're really going the right direction and things are looking really strong for our personnel. Next week on Tuesday at 4 o'clock out here in the parking lot, I think it's 4 to 7, is our National Night Out / SPD open house. So we'll have a bunch of the different specialty units out there, canines and drones and all the stuff. I think we're gonna have a fire truck out there, motorcycles, all that kind of thing. So pass the word, we'll be pushing on social media. It's a great event for kids to come by. I'm sure we'll have some kind of ice cream or.
Kona ice.
Kona
The
ice cream.
shaved ice, yeah.
Awesome.
So
So,
I'll be there now.
There's a duck tank if you want to get in it.
I'll probably have a few people that would like to.
so that'll be a fun event. That's Tuesday night. So spread the word, invite family, neighbors, whoever, and stop by just for a few minutes. It'll be a fun time. We've done, I think I mentioned this before, we've done a decent amount of crowd management training and really trying to ramp up our ability here at SPD to manage crowds. And I say this because I just, in anticipation of the election season, given what's happened in recent years with that, I just assume we're gonna see some more active crowds coming up. So we're trying to be way out ahead of that. We've sent some people off to training. We brought some people in here to SPD and had them train all of patrol, what we call mobile field force. So all patrol officers have a basic line level understanding of how to do crowd management. We've got some officers here at SPD that applied for and were selected for kind of a higher tier of that crowd management kind of team. So we've got that layered there also. And then depending on the size of the event, I mean, nobody around here is really big enough to do it themselves. So there's mutual aid we've got with the county and Eugene and OSP. And so just depending on the event and which side of the border it happens on, I think it's going to be an all hands on deck kind of a thing. We're just trying to be out ahead of that event. If something happens, we're more than prepared for it, not trying to play catch up. Summer Bike Patrol, which is primarily our school resource officers, because they're out of school obviously during the summers, but we have some other people that do it as well. So we're trying to get the bike patrol out as often as we can. It's usually at events like the 4th of July events and some of the things we've got going on around. But we're gonna try to push them out more throughout the summer, spend some time on some of the Willamette Lane properties, working with the rangers, just being high visibility and because they can really cover a lot of ground on a lot of these trails and stuff and sometimes find themselves right in the middle of something because people didn't expect the cops to come down way down this trail. So bikes are a great tool. Once the weather's nice, we got some people that are dedicated to do it. So hopefully we see more of them out and about as well. Cahoots. So historically, the city of Springfield has paid roughly $500,000 and the county has paid roughly $500,000 to provide Cahoot services 24/7 here in Springfield. The county has been mandated by the state. It's a statewide thing where the counties have to provide mobile mental health crisis services. So the county pulled their 500,000 out while they build this program. It's not quite up and running yet. I'm not going to speak to their program because it's the county's program, but it's working. They're getting it up and running, but it's delayed. I don't know if we're going to see it at the end of summer or fall, but that's going to be a countywide program. So they're going to stand up multiple personnel, multiple vans, mobile, and it's a countywide response. What we've decided to do here in the meantime in the city of Springfield, we've continued funding it with our 500,000 roughly, but instead of getting 24-hour service, we're getting 12-hour service. So we only have Cahoots response capabilities in the city of Springfield 12 hours a day versus 20 hours a day. And so we're managing our way through that. So in those hours when Cahoots is not available, we respond, refer people to services, do the best we can with what we got. But until the county's system stands up, there's a little bit of a gap there. And talking to the county folks, I mean, it should be a good program when it's up and running, and it's not necessarily meant to be a replacement for Cahoots. They're gonna have a different tier of response that they come to, where I think the line for us to dispatch Cahoots has typically been lower than what the county's response is gonna be. So there's gonna be kind of this middle gray area. So I feel like there's still gonna be room for Cahoots. And it's just part of the bigger mechanism to address people that are in mental health crisis in varying degrees. And I think the county response is gonna be people that are in a much higher level of crisis. But a lot of what we deal with as police officers, and what people call 911 for, call the police for, we see out on the street, might not be the people that are in severe crisis, but they clearly are suffering from something and they need that level of support. So I feel like that's where Cahoots is still gonna be able to deliver a service that we all want. So that's something that's still in flux, but I just wanted you aware of that. I know we pushed out on social media a while back, or the city did, that we only have 12-hour coverage now, and that started July 1, I think. But hopefully here by the end of summer and into fall, we start seeing the county's program really grow into that.
What 12 hours or is it random?
I think we're starting at 11 in the morning. Yeah, it starts at 11 in the morning, goes 12 hours. In the middle of the night, you're not gonna. And we base the hours based on the call load.
Sure.
So we looked at the call load on a 24-hour clock, and that 12-hour period beginning at 11 a.m. is when we had the bulk of the calls. And so we figured it just made sense to shift it there to get the most bang for our buck.
Chief,
Yes.
once the county has their program stood up, is it still gonna be coverage throughout Springfield, or is there gonna really be any restrictions?
They are to provide response to the entire county. You know, they have a lot of ground to cover. They've got they got rural areas all over the place. I'm not sure how many vans they're gonna have. It's gonna be more than one, I know that. So there are gonna be multiple vans at any given time to respond around the state. But given how many they can stand up, and how many calls come in around the state or the county, how many calls come in countywide, could we potentially find ourselves at some point with, we need them and they're at the coast or somewhere else or tied up? Of course, that's possible. It's just gonna I think they're kind of building the airplane as we're flying it, so.
Has anybody called over from the county in regards to the calls for service for Cahoots within Springfield? I mean, okay, they know how many calls the Cahoots has over the year, and if there's 2,000 calls, how many of those 2,000 were dedicated in Springfield, and then going with that ratio in regards to dissemination of the assets?
I can't answer that specifically. I think we divert here in Springfield, the 50,000 calls we get a year. I want to say it's like 50,000 or 5,000-ish of them get diverted off to communities that's in the city limits here.
Right.
So is that what you're asking? How many of the percent?
Yeah, I was saying, if they're drawing up plans to do a stand-up program, the allocation of assets or resources, you know, if they're considering or have thought to
The
consider
volume.
the volume, right?
I believe they have it, and I'm under the impression that they're gonna have vans that are relatively dedicated to the metro area here, the Eugene, Springfield area. Because they know this is where the bulk of the calls are gonna come from, but I don't know how many they're gonna have up at any given time, and depending on what's going on in Eugene, Springfield, outside the city limits, you know. We're gonna have to see.
See what their deployment plan is. Yeah.
But they do post regular updates. I think they've got a website where they're posting regular updates and timelines and benchmarks and things like that. So
Yeah, we just
it's in works.
Did we, they're gonna give us back the van we bought?
But we bought that for Cahoots, so they're driving the van that we bought in Springfield. We just yesterday, so this is hot off the press. We haven't shared this publicly and council doesn't even know it yet. So the state of Oregon, came up with roughly $5 million to be distributed through the Criminal Justice Commission specifically to fight organized retail theft because it's been such a problem around the state.
Did hear.
So there was a grant process where we applied and the city of Springfield did a great job with their application. And we were granted, I think it was right around $500,000 that we got granted yesterday afternoon to fight retail theft. So that's to, it's for some equipment, it's for overtime backfill, it's to run retail theft missions here in the city of Springfield. And I'm most impressed because of all the agencies around the state, including, you know, City of Portland, Eugene, and great big agencies. We got the third largest award of all of them in the state of Oregon. I think the two that were bigger than us is Clackamas County got a little bit more than us. But there's a Washington County task force made up of multiple cities in Washington County. And so they got, I can't remember, it's like $1 million. They got a lot, but that represents multiple cities. And we get 500, which is more than our neighbors and some of the much bigger cities around the state. So
We did pretty good.
we did outstanding. So I'm super proud of the team for and we got it not just because they wrote a good grant, because they've demonstrated over the last, year with our newly stood up crime reduction unit and all the missions they've been doing. And then that kind of rolls into the big Lego caper that somebody might have seen a couple weeks ago. There was people stealing from major retailers where they'd walk in, steal a duffel bag, fill with brand new Legos and go to a store over in Eugene where they get pennies on the dollar and sell it. So they had a long-term investigation where we served a warrant on a store in Eugene, seized a couple $100,000 worth of Legos. Got all kinds of national attention from Inside Edition to 60 Minutes to CNN to TMZ and you name it, everybody wanted a piece of the Lego story. But I think that was good timing as well, because the people that make these decisions can see that SPD's not messing around when it comes to organized retail theft. And I think that definitely helped us get that up. So we're super excited about that. Excuse me. Couple updates on some detective cases, just because I think some people brought that up here recently, like, hey, what's going on with some of the good police work around here? Two things. One of our detectives, a while back, a guy was arrested for robbery with a gun where he knocked down an elderly to the ground at gunpoint, stole some of her items. It sounds like he was actually on his way somewhere else to do some bad stuff, but he just encountered this woman and robbed her at gunpoint and then left to do his other bad thing. Well, anyway, he got caught and he was just sentenced to 70 months. So that's a great job. And he's gonna be off the street for a while. So that's somebody being held accountable for behaviors that we don't want around here. Another great, I shouldn't say use the word great because it's kind of a tragic case. A child sex abuse case, some really bad stuff. The detectives worked extremely hard on this, took the person into custody. Sentencing is that he was found guilty and sentencing is coming up here in a few weeks, but he's looking at 60 years for the things that he did.
Yes.
So sentences like that, I want to believe, send a real message to the other people that might be engaged in that kind of stuff. And it definitely takes somebody who's a very dangerous, bad person off the street for a long time, puts him in prison where he deserves for what he did.
Age on him? I was wondering if he was gonna stay there.
He's gonna be there a long time.
Yeah, that's one thing.
And the final thing is we are going to be posting, we've completed our complaints report that we do every year. We're gonna be posting on the website here soon, but we just went over the final draft of it last week, and there's several pages here. Maybe it'll be a topic for a future meeting, but I just wanted to give you some highlights from it. So, like I said, we take about 50,000 calls a year for service. So of the 48,958 calls did not generate any complaints. And we had 69 that did, which means 99.86 of our calls for service do not generate complaints. That's not to say that the 69 people that complained about something, we take those very seriously and dive into them, but I think that's a good indicator that that's such a small number. Now, that doesn't mean people might have complaints, maybe not as many people have called in. But the number of complaints this year almost doubled from what it was last year, not because people are complaining more, it's because we're being even more thorough in how we take those complaints. So when somebody calls the front desk or calls in and wants to talk to a sergeant, they want to make a complaint about something. Sometimes the sergeant can resolve it within 10 minutes. They can kind of come to an understanding or explain something. The person's like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, okay, that's fine. But there's any number of ways that things can be resolved at the lowest level. Well, we weren't, and frankly, most agencies don't count that as a complaint. We're counting everything. If you call and make a complaint, it gets a number so we can track it. And so I think for us, it just shows that we're being much more thorough, and then we show the outcomes of the investigations where they resolved an intake. Was it sustained? Were the officers exonerated? Were they not sustained? It's all the different findings that we've got those all broken down in this report. And we've got all the complaints broken down into a number of different categories, from conduct to customer service to courtesy, discrimination, truthfulness, search and seizure, use of force, on and on and on. So we've got all these different categories, and within each category, we talk about the different findings for every single complaint. I'm proud of the work the SPD are doing. They're not generating very many complaints at all. When they do, we take them very serious. We don't just sweep things under the rug and blow them off. And this will be posted on the website next week. So that may even be a link that we can send out to the group.
Do you have one category that generates more complaints?
Yes, just by total number of complaints overall. It's called conduct. And that's basically, people didn't like how they were treated. It's not necessarily force.
Yeah. It's
more like, hey, rudeness and things like that. So conduct kind of is an all encompassing one. That's the biggest number. So there's 20 there. It just goes on, like discrimination. There were 4 complaints about discrimination, and 11 complaints about use of force, 6 complaints about vehicle operations, just to give you an idea of the numbers and the categories that people complain about. I think that's probably it for the updates. Does anybody have questions?
Maybe has one.
Yes.
How many of those calls actually turn out to be nothing other than somebody angry at the police?
Several. I mean, there's a lot, and I'm not gonna go into all the numbers right now because there's a lot of numbers here, but in the report, I mean, it shows all the ones that are resolved at intake, the ones that are unfounded, the ones that are actually sustained. And so those numbers are all broken down on the report, but there's a good number of them. Sometimes people just have a misunderstanding. Or they have, they don't understand that the complaint they have might be something that they should be bringing up in court in front of a judge. Like I don't think I ran the light, or I don't think it's not really a complaint about the police behavior. It's just they want to explain their case. And so sometimes the sergeant will talk to you about that, like, well, that's something you got to bring up with the judge. That's a court thing. It's not just a complaint about police's behavior, and like, oh, okay, I didn't understand that. And so that's just an example.
One question. Why is it that it's always about police and bad stuff? Why is it?
It's not. This report has accommodations as well.
Okay.
So it's the complaint accommodation report. So this will go over all accommodations as well. We get a lot of positive feedback from the community too. We list that in here as well.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you. We have some policies.
Well, first, we have the new 2024 council operating policies and procedures I sent out to you guys. And I just want to make sure that you pay special attention to section 9, which starts on page 17, which is about commission police task force. So that's what it's applying to, you. That position, hold on. That we were calling a council liaison is now called a BCC liaison, so we don't get you confused with Joe. You're the council liaison. We have a separate position that we were calling kind of council liaison as a staff member, council liaison from the committee.
That was me.
That was Terry.
Attending city council meetings.
But it has,
Yeah,
yes, it's been renamed BCC liaison.
right.
And then there was one more thing. It says that the BCC liaisons are responsible for attending council meetings when input from a representative BCC is requested. You're encouraged to attend council meetings to keep informed about, but you don't, it's not required.
Right.
And then there was one more,
Board silly.
yes.
I usually, I do it by Zoom, but I'm usually watching you.
And this is something I think we're gonna need to vote on, but we don't have enough to vote, so I'll have to talk about it next meeting, but it says that we need a statement of purpose. I think that the goals that we came up with last year can be our statement of purpose without us having to reinvent the wheel, because the way they read, they're at the top of the agenda. I think that they read like a statement of purpose.
Okay.
They say build awareness and outreach between the community as a whole, and SPD with the focus on engaging BIPOC, LGBTQ+, and other historically minoritized communities. Review SPD policies as determined by the committee and or those recommended by SPD. So I think that's a perfect statement of purpose. No,
I
Yes.
think we ought to rethink.
you think so?
I do.
Okay,
I think there's been a shift, and I think
okay,
societal shift,
okay.
and I think it's be important to be more generalized as equal, that means all people.
Yeah.
Not group. Every-
Okay, that's, yeah, I understand
And I
that.
don't like trying to single out and special edition certain groups. I think it's important that we
Okay.
recognize every citizen is exactly and is just as important as the person standing next to them.
Okay, so
Good
when
suggestion.
we have at least a quorum here,
Right.
Yeah.
hopefully next time we can discuss that again and maybe form another subcommittee to get it done, or
I
if
don't
we
know if it needs a subcommittee, I think just hash it out.
Yeah,
hash it out.
Yeah.
I think we'd end up with a consensus.
That
Okay.
one, just that one little bit needs to be changed.
Okay. So that was what I had on the operating policies, and I sent you them, so you should have them.
Yep.
Now we have policy.
Oh, thank you.
These are two newer policies as a result of accreditation.
Yes, these are both ones that got updated through our accreditation process, so they're relatively recent, September of last year and August of last year, so they're some of our more up-to-date ones. Before I dive into them, did anybody review them and have any questions right out of the gate, or you want me to kind of go through them first?
I did review them and I don't have questions.
So I do, and it could be, this is part of a bigger use of force model. I'm not sure, so I wanted to dive in just a little bit to see, because I had a few questions in regards to, when it comes to force. Many agencies historically have said anytime, for example, someone complains of an injury. And I don't see, that would actually institute say, okay, we need to cover our tails, write a use of force memo. So that way that doesn't become a broken bone 3 months from now. And so I don't see, there's a complaint of injury issue that I don't see requires mandatory use of force memo even. And secondly, if there's property damage as a result of use of force, if there's any type of documentation of that.
If we do property, if we break something during the course of our duties, we document that. And complaints of force are documented in blue team. That's part of our policy. If somebody's complaining that they're injured, we do document that. That's just these investigations. It's a little different because if somebody complains of force, it's documented, it's potentially addressed, but it's not like we just ignore that.
Right, yeah, I knew that, I figured there was something, I knew that blue
Blue team, yeah, that's the internal process that we
Yeah,
have.
and even where someone complained, for example, if there's some force used, that there was a semi-cooperative arrest, takedown, and there's no necessarily, not necessarily complaint of force, but for example, if there was clothes torn. And, you know, anytime, I just look at it as I see spreadsheets of lawsuits from this, on the city, and I just try to sit there and say, okay, how can we potentially mitigate some of those, and looking at a way in which, you know, was saying if it's not written, it didn't happen.
If there's force used and somebody's taken to the ground and their pants are ripped, that's investigated as a use of force. The sergeant reviews all the police reports, the sergeant reviews the body cam footage, goes to the lieutenant reviews the police reports, the lieutenant reviews the body cam footage. Because if during the course of a use of force, someone's not injured, that
Right.
doesn't matter. Because
Right.
if we use the force, we investigate it.
That's, I didn't, wouldn't pull that out of the policy, and I thought we were covered really well, and you guys are doing a great job on that. The last use of force report from the council you did was great. So I just was wondering where it became policy. Thanks.
I'll hit the public recording and law enforcement activity one first, because that's kind of the quickest, easiest one. The bottom line is you can record the police. I think we've all seen the body cam footages from around the country where, you know, somebody's recording the police, and maybe they're getting a little annoying and getting a little close, and the police jump on them, take their phone away, all that stuff. You can't do that. People have every right to record the police. What they don't have the right to do is interfere with your investigation or cause an officer safety issue. And sometimes sometimes some people think they can just do whatever it is that they want with the camera, and that's not the case. We have a right to keep you back out of a certain area. If we're in the middle of an investigation, it doesn't mean you can just run up and, you know, interfere and stick your camera in the face and start talking to the person that you're trying to interview or whatever else. You can stand back, you can stand on the other side of the street, stand up on the sidewalk, you can record all you want to. And we don't take people's phones away just because they're recording us, but we aren't going to tolerate either people that are trying to interfere with the investigation or cause an officer safety issue when we're trying to do our work. If somebody shows up and there's the recording and it becomes a problem, if the officers can, depending on the circumstance, call supervisors at the scene, they will. Sometimes it might be happening really quickly and they might not even be able to call a supervisor. But if somebody's standing there just generally trying to cause a scene because of the recording, we'll try to call a supervisor and have them come out and talk to the person. That's generally speaking what it said. We wrote this policy, so it was clear to the officers and clear to the public. Like, it's not illegal to record the cops. That's okay, but it's the line you can't cross. Questions about that one? All right, use of force investigations. So this one, there's a lot here. This is complicated. So uses of force involving death or serious physical injury. So if you are involved, let's say in an officer involved shooting, there is what we call the criminal investigation, and there's the administrative investigation. The criminal investigation is run by the interdisciplinary investigative team that's run by the DA's office called IDFIT. It's made up of officers from multiple agencies and it's run by the DA. So their job is to come out and basically do a criminal investigation to determine if the force used was used in accordance of the law and does it cross the line into criminal behavior or not. And they investigated, they presented to the district attorney's office. The district attorney makes a determination, was this against the law or not? Most of the time, it's not against the law. So, but it doesn't mean necessarily that this incident was done correctly or to the best of the officer's ability or within training. So then that's where this administrative review comes in. So there's agencies have, and we have an administrative internal review that looks at that incident to determine, did they operate under the boundaries of the policies that we have written? Did they follow the training that we have provided them? And if they didn't, to what degree and what is the remedy for that? Do we need to write better policy? Do we need to have better training? Is there some level of remedial, something remedial we need to do for the officer involved because they should have known better and didn't? Or was it a gap that we had as an agency where we just didn't appropriately prepare them and so they did the best they could, or maybe made a mistake? And then there's just varying levels of mistakes depending on the circumstances. Sometimes it's going to be additional training for an officer. Sometimes it might rise to the level of very significant discipline or even termination, just depending on the egregiousness of what happened. So there's the criminal investigation typically done by InFit, was this against the law or not? When that's done, then we do our internal administrative investigation to determine if it was they didn't follow policy, didn't follow training, there's some other to identify what can we do as an agency to learn from this, do better, and hopefully mitigate the risk of something like this happening in the future. That's kind of in a nutshell how those investigations work. What we have is the Force Review Committee internally, and so that's made up of the Force Review Committee. A lot of the language here came out of the settlement that we reached with the Kenny family a few years ago as a result of an officer-involved shooting that members of SPD were involved in. So there was a lot of negotiation at the table between the family and the representatives and the PD and the city to come to the languages in this Force Review Committee on page 2. So the Force Review Committee has 4 standing members that includes the patrol commander, the defensive tactics supervisor, the firearms instructor, and the crisis intervention team coordinator. There's also ad hoc members that are on it. It could be defensive tactics instructors or an involved member supervisor. One of the changes I made after we got here is the involved member supervisor cannot be on this committee if the supervisor was working at the incident. That you can't have somebody sitting on a committee to review an incident that a person was a part of, especially as a supervisor, because that supervisor's actions are going to get reviewed as well in our administrative review to make sure that they did the appropriate things, either before, during, or after this incident. So we have the Force Review Committee, and the goal of the committee is to examine all the force incidents. I'm just reading verbatim here to identify areas for improvement in training, tactics, equipment, or policy changes that are going to better prepare the people of this department for those kind of situations in the future. And they're not going to examine just the moment the force was used, like, was it justified to, pull the trigger at that one moment in time? Maybe in that moment in time, there was no alternative. But what the committee is going to look at is what led up to that moment in time. How did we get to this place where that decision was made? Are there decision points, that started 5 minutes earlier, 10 minutes earlier, 20 minutes earlier when the call first came out, that along the way, there could have been different decision points that might not have resulted in this incident. So that's the kind of holistic look that they're going to take at these incidents to learn from as an organization, to be like, can we do better? Was this avoidable? Sometimes it's not, sometimes it might be. I think there's almost never a situation that police are ever involved in that there's not some piece of it that could be done differently or better, or you can learn from. Nothing ever is perfect. It's never going to be. So we need to take a critical look at all these. We're not trying to get people in trouble. I mean, if somebody obviously violated policy and did a bad thing, they're held accountable. But the goal is, we're not just looking to get people in trouble. We're looking to dissect these situations, learn from them, and figure out, is there some way we can do it better? The committee does not make disciplinary decisions. They basically write up their findings and then ultimately gets presented to me. And then I review that Force Review Committee investigation. And if I feel there's something that's out of policy and warrants anything from termination to a week off to a day off to a letter in their file, just depending on what it is, then I'm the one that administers that level of discipline. Questions about that?
I appreciate this policy. You have no idea the breath of fresh air this has been over the past decade. Really come a long way.
The entire team has got behind this. They understand the need for it. Hey, we want to do the right thing. We always want to do the right thing. We want to learn from everything that we do. Can we somehow do it better? We want to set the members of this organization up for success. We want to protect the community as best we can. It's about striking that balance that takes all those interests into account. I feel like we're doing a good job. There's always room for improvement. We're always learning, trying to do things better, and it's never going to stop, but I feel like we're in a good place right now.
So in a scenario where you mentioned that, like, if the supervising commander is involved in the incident, so you have to select an alternate to participate. So given some of the training requirements to serve 40 hours, that's quite a bit. So how are you going about making that decision?
That's a great question. And that most all of the officers in our agency have been through that 40-hour CIT training. I think there's maybe maybe on one hand, I could count some of the newer ones that might not have been yet, but we've made an effort the last couple of years to get every member of the organization through that 40-hour training. So to answer your question, we take that into account. If you're a supervisor and I'm the involved member, like, I really want Sergeant Piscineri, he's my favorite. It's like, well, he can't do it because he was there next to you when you did this. And so it's like, all right, how about Sergeant Adams? Like, okay, well, he wasn't there that day. He was on vacation. So we're gonna step into this committee and kind of evaluate that from the street patrol level supervisor perspective, because every person on the committee brings a little different perspective to the table. And so that's why the supervisor's on there.
Anything else? Okay. Anybody have anything to share?
Well, I think it is, but, you know, I mean, actually, so I was just thinking about this today. Kind of irrelevant, but relevant, is that, you know, there's many homes up in Thurston that are still very damaged and not being lived in. And I have seen and I've heard of zero issues with people going in, vandalizing or stealing or anything. And I'm actually almost shocked.
Yeah.
And it's a really good thing. So, but I think, people that engage or want to engage in that activity are kind of scared to, I think. And it stands to, is because I think, I'm just guessing that there's, you know, people are making very obvious patrols up in the area, taking some extra effort. And that's pretty amazing. I'm really very thankful personally.
I think that's probably a combination too of a community, I want to believe, that has trust in their police department. So they're not afraid to call the police, even for little things. They see something suspicious, they call it in. They know they see the police officer show up a couple minutes later and check it out. So I think it's not just that people involved in criminal activity are nervous about getting caught. I like to believe that's part of it too, because they know we're out there watching, paying close attention, but I think it's also, you know, a community that is working with the police to stop that stuff.
The communication is big.
That's getting bigger and better all the time.
Yeah, I know that unlawful activity, at least I can speak for the Thurston Hills area, the residents don't hold back too much.
Right.
And they really get engaged.
I know in Washburn, the same thing is happening, and that used to be kind of a high
Yeah,
crime area. And-
Yeah.
Same.
I live out in Thurston as well, and one thing I've noticed, you know, I have a ring, and so you're part of that community.
Yep.
And I've seen a lot less people posting break-ins in their vehicles.
Yep.
So,
Right.
That's something
Those
interesting.
porch pirate things.
yeah, it's a lot less than the last few years.
I think part of that might be too, that there's statistically, it's a pretty small number of people that commit the big numbers of crime.
of course.
And so if we have removed, you know, a couple key people that might have been just wreaking havoc in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
It sometimes doesn't take very many
Yeah.
to hold accountable, and then it just kind of stops.
Well, there's been a lot less like on Thurston Neighborhood News,
Yeah.
Thurston Neighborhood Watch, the different groups that we belong to. And that there's been a significant decrease in this crime stuff.
I do have one thing that I'm pretty excited about, is the Springfield Utility Board donated for the K-9 units. I think that's so cool. Yeah,
It's awesome that they're doing that. That's not the first time they've done that.
I know that, yeah.
So they're very supportive of the K-9 unit, and
Yep.
kind of to dovetail into that, we had several thousand.
It was, yeah, a bunch.
We had a nice little old lady walk into the lobby here a couple weeks ago and wanted to talk to the K-9 sergeant, and wanted to help out, and I wanted to buy a dog. She proceeded to write a check for $10,000.
Christmas.
She's just always been a big fan of the K-9 program.
That's awesome.
That wasn't Millie, was it? No.
No, she's,
Millie passed away all the
Yeah.
time, yeah.
So there's a lot of support
Yeah,
for the K-9 program, but I think for SPD, because we've had people make donations like that to support other things, whether it's the drone program or any number of things, the chat program. There's a lot of really good people in this community that raise money and like to come donate it to them. So that means a lot to
I
us.
was really proud of him, so doing that. Something else I was, when are they going down and getting these dogs?
I think it was September.
September.
Yeah, they're going down in September. There's 2 dogs they're gonna try to get. I'm not a dog person, but I know they go down there and it's total chaos. They let the puppies loose. There's dogs running everywhere, and there's cops running everywhere trying to pick the best ones. And it's just like this free for all to try to get the best dogs. So they're hoping to come back with 2, but they're not gonna bring, if they can't find 2, they'll bring back the one that they find. And if they can't find any, they don't just bring back a dog because they go.
Because
They put a tremendous amount of effort into screening these dogs during the days that they're down there. And they'll take them out at night, the daytime, they do all these different things to truly, because the dog might seem great on the surface, but there's just this one thing that it can't do, so that makes it unusable as a police dog. And so they really put a lot of time and effort into trying to get the right ones. And some of the dogs are warranty too, so sometimes you can get them back, and if something pops up where they're, afraid of loud noises or scared of whatever, fire trucks or something, and you just can't get them over it, they have a warranty too, we can send them back.
I hope we all get to meet them after they get.
Oh, you will, yeah, absolutely.
Anything else?
Yeah, just a handful of things. All good, kudos in the long run. We had, started out as an unfortunate situation, one of our facilities, that turned out really well through great coordination with SPs, detectives, and Deputy Chief Rush. Ultimately resulted- Yep.
Yeah.
Arrest of a previously convicted sex offender. So glad to work with them on that. It's a great outcome. Thanks. Really happy with our staff. Excited to see the bike patrol coming back, and we're in touch with the sergeant and get coordinated with him and park rangers. And then some of you may know that I forget the name of the street now, but adjacent to James Park, kind of down in Glenwood's been sort of a growing presence of a lot of dilapidated RVs and other such conduct.
You're talking about right on the county
Yeah.
line, yeah, where there's some
Right along
stuff
the
that's kind of on the county side of the street, but we're still going out there trying to
So
solve the problem.
appreciate you guys extending the effort there and cross jurisdiction to help stay on top of things. So.
All right, we'll call the adjournment at 7:00. Adjourned.
Enjoy the rest of your summers.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for coming.